This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
Each week, there's usually a dozen or so smaller AI updates that slip under the radar, yet can completely change how we can interface with AI. This week was no different. We recently started this new Friday Features series here on Everyday AI to better showcase smaller AI updates and fresh features from all the biggest AI companies. But to be honest, this week we could have literally just focused on Anthropic's updates. They had nearly 10 noteworthy new AI features, though their biggest one, their new computer use tool, went absolutely viral. And I think it's the first mainstream look at the future agentic layer. And Anthropic wasn't the only company going completely crazy this week with useful AI updates, as Google dropped new features across music, real-time voice AI, and even translation that we'll go over all of those today. Oh, and there's new AI-powered ways to search the web, better ways to chat with your files on ChatGPT, and a new, fairly capable live voice agent. All of these new AI features waiting to potentially disrupt your old manual workflow. Did you miss any of these? Yeah, chances are you did. Don't worry, stick with me for the next 20-ish minutes, and you're going to be up to speed and the smartest person in AI in your department or company. So here's what we're going to be going over on today's show and what you'll learn. Well, first, you'll learn why the new Genspark super agent might be worth paying closer attention to with some of its new real-time capabilities. You're going to learn a fast and free way to schedule work from your phone with one of the biggest names in tech. And you'll learn why Anthropic just showed us the future of AI, even though right now it's a little bit buggy. All right, you ready to get into it? Let's get featuring on this Friday. Welcome to Everyday AI. My name is Jordan Wilson. If you're new here, this thing's for you. It's your daily live stream podcast, free daily newsletter helping everyday business leaders like you and me keep up with these bevy of AI updates. I tell you what matters, what doesn't. You take that information and grow your company and career. So if that sounds like what you're trying to do, sweet, starts here. But for the real cheat code, that's our website, youreverydayai.com. So there you can not only sign up for our free daily newsletter where we recap each day's podcast and everything else going on in the AI world, but also you can go watch the video version of every single episode as well. So sometimes these, Friday shows a little bit more visual. It should be fine for our podcast audience. You should be fine even if you're just out walking your dog or on the treadmill or whatever. I'll keep you going and make sure to go check out today's newsletter as well. All right, let's get into it. Live stream audience, let me know. Can you see my screen? Hopefully you can. All right. First, Lyria 3 Pro from Google. Google got super musical this week. And you know what? It might be one of those instances where it's like, okay, are they competing with Suno here? Does Google even need to compete with Suno? Probably not. But does the new Lyria 3 Pro get there? Not quite, because also this week, Suno released their newest version, Suno 5.5, which is extremely impressive. But I think for the most part, now, even if you were a casual AI music user, well, now you have access to the new Lyria 3 Pro if you have a paid Google account. So even if you were like, this Suno looks great, or, Udio looks great, but I don't want to pay for it, well, now you just have access to it with Google's new model. So let's go over what's new. The biggest thing with Lyria 3 Pro, because Lyria 3 has been out for a couple of weeks, but Lyria 3 Pro takes the quality and the duration up. The biggest thing is previously, Lyria 3 only gave you 30 seconds, which is like, what's the use, right? Yes, it just came out like 5 weeks ago, but I tested it around. I'm like, what can you do with 30 seconds, right? There's nothing, unless you need an intro for a podcast or something, right? 30 seconds isn't doing too much, at least if you want to actually, use the music in a meaningful way. But now you can go up to 3 minutes. Some other big updates kind of under the hood. Google says that Lyria 3 Pro better understands song structure, and you can prompt for intros, verses, choruses, bridges, etc. So you have a little bit more granular control, at least via your prompting, over how the music turns out. One thing I didn't see that I wanted to do some testing on that I did, which it actually worked pretty well. I said, okay, 3 minutes is great, but what if you want something longer? Right. One thing I love lo-fi. Right. I always listen to lo-fi when I do work. It just helps me kind of space out. And all these AI music generators, they make probably better music at their core than these lo-fi stations. But, I need like an hour of lo-fi to really lock in. And I'm like, okay, I wonder if I can upload a Lyria 3 music piece of, an MP3 into Google Gemini and have it pick up from where it left off. So Google didn't say this, but it's actually really good at that. So if you have like a very random use case, it actually did a good job, right? I generated something with Lyria 3 Pro. I uploaded it and said, hey, can you essentially pick off where the end of this song left off, right? So a lot of these, I know that Google is great with anything multimodality, and they have kind of first frame, last frame for video. So I'm like, let me do the equivalent of this for music. And it actually worked pretty well. So here's how you can access Lyria 3. So if you do have a paid account on Google Gemini, you already have access, and you can access it within the Gemini app. So if you're on the Pro, the $20 a month, well, this makes it easy. It's 20 songs a day. If you're on the Ultra, you get 50 songs a day. You can also access it via Vertex AI. So if you are wanting to use this in production, you have it that route inside Google's Google AI Studio via the Gemini API, Google Vids, and Producer AI. If you are a free Gemini user, you're not going to get access to it right now. So here's what I think it's useful for, and maybe who can find it valuable. I think it's useful. It just moves AI music from kind of these novelty clips to actually usable content, right? Something I used to do a lot way back in the day, like 15 to 20 years ago, right? I made a lot of videos, and sometimes you would just spend a lot of time looking for the right, music to transition from one clip to another. So if you're a content creator needing royalty-free custom music, this is great, right? You can kind of dictate it with the lyrics that you want, all of those things, and just the new structural awareness means that outputs just sound like real songs and not just random loops, right? The 30-second clips weren't too helpful or useful, in my opinion, but now with 3 minutes, they are. And like I said, use my little hack that I tried. Let me know if it works well for you. And then you can actually maybe even string something a little bit more together. Also, I think this is good for enterprise video teams that are using Google Vids. Google Vids is actually pretty slept on. I think it's really good. And also just for developers, building creative tools via the Gemini API. Also, it is important to know that all outputs are watermarked with Google's Synth ID. So you can tell that it is AI generated, and Google says it is trained on licensed permissible data from YouTube and Google partners. All right, so let's get going to our next one, and this is from Microsoft Copilot. All right, so on Wednesdays, FYI, and maybe I'll quickly explain kind of our weekly rhythm here, and hopefully you guys are liking it. I'm kind of enjoying the flow myself. But on Mondays, we bring you the AI news that matters. But generally, with the way that AI has just kind of come to take over the enterprise and the business world, a lot of times we are not talking a ton about new features unless they're big AI model updates, right? So on Mondays, we go over the AI news that matters. On Wednesdays, we go hands-on and in depth with one thing. We do live demos, really getting under the hood. And then Fridays here, it's kind of the in between. So on Wednesday, we did go over the new Copilot tasks, which I was very impressed with. But the new feature here for Feature Friday is Copilot task rolling out to mobile. So you will have to update, on iOS, your Copilot app. And then you should be good to go. The good thing here as well is it's free. One thing that's confusing, and I went over this a little bit more in depth. So let me see what episode that was, our Copilot tasks episode. If you want to go listen to that, it's 741. Just keep in mind, this is for Copilot on the web. in the Copilot app. This isn't for Microsoft 365 Copilot, so not the enterprise version, although I do think and hope that they'll be rolling this out. And I have been chatting with the head of this project over at Microsoft. They've already shipped out some of the features or some of the bugs that I found. So, if there is something in Copilot Tasks that you would want, let me know. I'll see if I can get the Microsoft team to cook it up. But a little bit more about Copilot Task, and this will explain maybe why it's super helpful on the web. And I think we've seen a lot of this over the past couple of weeks, specifically with everything that Anthropic has been shipping, right? Which is just bringing kind of that full, agentic capability, but in a remote way, right? So now you can take advantage of the, everything that Copilot has to offer, but via mobile, but specifically when it comes to agentic orchestration, right? Because that's really what Copilot tasks is. So this is Microsoft's new agent feature that executes multi-step tasks in the background using its own cloud computer and browser. So it is a research preview. And like I said, it is free to use now. And the coolest thing that I think, aside from, yes, now Copilot tasks are in a mobile app, which is super helpful, I like being able to text Copilot tasks, right? Simple things, hey, what are the most important emails I have right now? Being able to go do some competitive research and create a deck for me, right? Being able to text something like that for me is really cool. And then being able to schedule these things as well. So right now, this is available in a research preview, all right, but it is free. And now with this rolling out to the mobile app, the Copilot app on iOS, I think it's really, really helpful. So like I said, I did go into this a little bit more in the dedicated Microsoft Tasks show, but why it's useful, I mean, come on, this is like a true agentic powerhouse. I was actually kind of shocked how good this is, just because for me, Copilot has never been something that I'm like the first to rush to, right? Unless I really need to do something inside Excel, inside PowerPoint for a certain reason, right? Because then they do have some of the new integrations with both Claude and with ChatGPT that I think are really, really good. But for the most part, I'm not, rushing to use Copilot as number one or number two in my stack, if I'm being honest. But with this one, I am, just because it did a really good job and it was fast, right? And go check out that entire episode, right? 741. So one thing I really liked about Copilot Tasks is you can even edit the slides that it creates, right? In the same way that, Google has kind of an annotate feature in some of their different products. You can literally it can go and do a bunch of research for you on its own agentically. You can schedule something every day or, once a week, right? And connect it to your data as well. That's the other big thing, right? So connecting it to, your Google Drive or your Gmail or your, your Outlook email, right? If there's something that you do routinely every week that lives inside of those apps, right? You can schedule it. It can grab that. It can create you new documents, right? You can browse the web. It has access to its own browser. And now it's also accessible via the app. So pretty big one there that I think a lot of people are going to find useful. AI moves too fast to follow, but you're expected to keep up. Otherwise, your career or company might lag behind while AI native competitors leap ahead. But you don't have 10 hours a day to understand it all. That's what I do for you. But after 700 plus episodes of Everyday AI, the most common questions I get is, where do I start? That's why we created the Start Here series, an ongoing podcast series of more than a dozen episodes you can listen to in order. It covers the AI basics for beginners and sharpens the skills of AI champions pushing their companies forward. In the ongoing series, we explain complex trends in simple language that you can turn into action. There's 3 ways to jump in. Number 1, go scroll back to the first one in episode 691. Number 2, tap the link in your show notes at any time for the Start Here series, or you can just go to starthereseries.com, which also gives you free access to our Inner Circle community where you can connect with other business leaders doing the same. The Start Here series will slow down the pace of AI so you can get ahead. All right, next. This is a smaller one, but I think this is one where technically like billions of people are going to find I think, just immense value out of this. This is because Google Translate Live is finally available in headphones. All right, stick with me. I know this sounds small. So essentially, this has been a feature that had previously been rolled out to Android, but is now available on the Google, or sorry, inside the Google Translate app on iOS. And here's why I think this is really important. Well, first, just kind of let me tell you what it does. So the new Live Translate with Headphones feature is available on iOS, and essentially any headphones that you have, whether they're wired or Bluetooth, right? Now they can kind of be a real-time personal interpreter, right? So some of the newer, AirPods, as an example, have this feature kind of built in, but they're pretty expensive, right? So now it's literally any pair of headphones, if you're using Google Translate, can translate live, right? So this is, I think, one of those things. Yes, there's plenty of business use cases, obviously, right? If you do any international business, if you're traveling internationally, I think this is really going to help, especially if you don't speak the language. But obviously on the personal side, this is huge. Right. And so this is powered by Google Gemini's speech-to-speech translation, and it also preserves tone, cadence, and emphasis of the speaker. And the best thing is, well, it's free, right? And it does work with any headphones. You don't have to have, any AI-powered headphones, any of the new Google or Apple headphones, literally anything, as long as you have access to data on your phone and you have the latest version of Google Translate. That's all that is needed. So there's 3 different modes. So there's a listening mode, that's real-time translation in your ears. There's conversation, so you can hear the translation in the headphones and others hear it out loud. And then there's text only, that is just the on-screen text translation. So right now it supports more than 70 languages. And while there's no more, I've had to do this before in certain instances, there's no more kind of passing a phone, back and forth. You can just wear the headphones now and listen. So obviously, if you're visiting different countries, this is super helpful. Families with members that speak different languages, or just business professionals in multilingual meetings. This one, I think, is going to be very helpful. All right, our next new feature, this one also from Google. You might be saying, wait, Gemini 3.1 Flash, isn't this an old model? Well, yes, but no, because it's brand new, because this is now Gemini 3.1 Flash Live. So here is what's new, and this does change the way that you search. So just stick around for that for a second here. So this was just released yesterday. This is Google's new audio to audio model, and it powers the new Gemini Live experience and Search Live. All right. And Search Live. So this is just a way to essentially, well, it's the way you search the web with live video. Right. So this is also expanding globally to 200 plus countries. And this was previously in US only. So here's who has access. Well, literally anyone. Anyone can, if you're using AI mode in Google search, you will be able to benefit from this. Obviously, developers, you can use this on the Gemini Live API or in Google AI Studio, or enterprises, in the Gemini Enterprise for customer experience. So here's why it's useful, and I think who will find it valuable. Well, I think it just follows conversation way better, according to Google, right? And it also holds context for 2 times as long as the previous model. So it's better at filtering out background noise, right? Traffic, TV, also being able to recognize kind of tonal nuances. So it can adjust responses when users sound frustrated or confused. Right now, 90 plus languages. So this is obviously developers, if you're building voice agents, customer service agents, this is huge, right? So the Flash version, obviously a little cheaper than the normal Gemini 3.1 Pro, which is multimodal by default. So this is specifically made for audio to audio. And I think that where this is really going to get popular, aside from being able to use it on the web, is just with developers being able to create voice agents. I think this is one area where Google Gemini models are really good. Also, I think enterprise contact centers are going to find a lot of utility out of this, and just international users who couldn't use Search Live, right? This is only available in the US, but now anyone can use it. I think there's a little kind of video demo, it might have been on a different page, right? But if you haven't used Search Live before, it is literally, right? If you see something out in the world and you're like, what the heck is this? Well, it's a live version of search. So you can click the live button, and it will see your camera, and you can talk to it as well. So if you see something strange, or if there's a sign, again, kind of, going back to the multilingual aspect, right? If you're traveling and you're like, okay, like, am I in the right spot? It will be able to see your camera. You can talk to it, right? But this is where it's really helpful. It's just this faster inference, the faster model, and, being able to, work across different languages is obviously helpful as well. So right now, also, anything that's generated does have the synth ID, just FYI. And developers, if you are migrating from 2.5 Flash, this does use the thinking, or make sure to use the thinking level instead of thinking budget. Some things for developers, it did change a little bit under the hood. So pretty impressive model. So here's kind of what Google said about it on their announcement post. They said, today, we're advancing Gemini's real-time dialogue capabilities with Gemini 3.1 Flash Live, our highest quality audio and voice model yet. It delivers the speed and natural rhythm needed for the next generation of voice-first AI, offering a more intuitive experience for developers, enterprises, and everyday users. And you can access it in the Gemini Live API, Google AI Studio, or like I said, the Gemini Enterprise for customer experience. And it's available in Search Live and Gemini Live. So, another thing, right? The Gemini Live aspect is helpful as well, right? So if you are someone that inside, Gemini as an example, or you're someone that loves to use, ChatGPT voice mode, make sure to check out this new version inside Gemini with Gemini Live. All right, next. This one's going to seem small, but ChatGPT has 900 million weekly active users. This is a small thing that a lot of people are going to find helpful, but you probably didn't see anything about it because it's not even really technically a feature. It's just a new way that OpenAI is essentially storing files inside ChatGPT, but it's important, so stick around. So the ChatGPT library has officially rolled out inside of ChatGPT. This is a new persistent file storage hub in ChatGPT's sidebar. So it automatically saves every file you upload or that ChatGPT creates. So that's documents, spreadsheets, presentations, etc. And here's the cool thing. Files persist across conversations until you manually delete them. So who has access to this right now? Well, sorry, it's not actually 900 million, but 900 million people have the ability to go use this if you want to, because it is only available right now to paid subscribers. So you do have to be on the ChatGPT Plus, Pro, or Business plan. It's not available yet on the ChatGPT Free or Go plans, although I do feel that eventually OpenAI will roll this out, because on the free plan, you're right, I think that's where they're really going to benefit from being able to serve better ads. And if you can, access people's uploaded files, you can serve them way better ads. So my guess is eventually this will roll out to free consumers when we get the new super app from ChatGPT, right? If you listen to the show yesterday, episode 742, going over OpenAI's most chaotic week ever, we did talk about that. OpenAI is eventually going to be rolling out a kind of single app to rule them all, right? They got rid of Sora, but they're essentially going to be rolling their ChatGPT, Codex, and Atlas all in one app. So I do see this new library feature being very useful in the future super app. But I mean, when it comes to just utility on how you can use it today, I mean, here's the biggest thing. You can ask ChatGPT about any files that you've saved, right? And that's the biggest thing. And that's something I'm going to immediately find helpful. There's a lot of different ways that you can organize your files, right? You can use projects. You can use GPTs. You can upload a file to an individual chat, to an individual conversation, right? But sometimes I'm like even thinking in my head, especially when I'm on the go, I'm like, oh, I know I had ChatGPT Go, I'm usually using GPT 5.4 Pro for this. I know I had to do a deep dive on, this big spreadsheet, but where did I save that? Was that in a project? Was it in a GPT? Was it in an individual chat? Now you just, if you've uploaded the file, if you know what it's called, or if you have an idea, it doesn't matter. You can just ask about it. So this is great, especially for people like me who try their hardest to stay very organized in ChatGPT, but sometimes you don't for whatever reason. This is pretty big, I think. And I think this eliminates one of the biggest friction points of ChatGPT, which is just uploading the same files across different conversations or just losing place, right? So for these artifacts that ChatGPT does produce, that's big as well. So yes, this is helpful for the files that you upload, but also what if, right, people, right? You need to be using ChatGPT for this, y'all. You need to be using ChatGPT to make you spreadsheets, to make you PowerPoint presentations, right? So now when ChatGPT makes you documents, it all goes in the library as well. And you can reference those from anywhere. So again, this might be one of the smallest updates on paper, but if you are a power ChatGPT user, this is actually a pretty big update. All right, moving on next. So Genspark, one of the super agents, right? Obviously a growing category, since OpenClaw has really popularized the, super agent or the, all-in-one agent. But Genspark and Manus, as an example, have been around for a while. And I think that Genspark just got a new update that a lot of people are going to like, right? So when we talk about real-time voice and access to your data, that's huge, right? That's one thing for me personally. I don't know. ChatGPT's voice mode hasn't really done it. I do have to give the new version of the Gemini 3.1 a little bit more testing since it literally just came out. But I might actually, I don't even know if I have a paid Genspark account. It might be one of the only platforms I don't have a paid account for. I pay for literally all of them. But this one, they just released a demo video this week, essentially. This woman who, was using Genspark real-time voice on her drive. She's having it check her calendar, move things around, send emails, check her, her teams, right? So anything that Genspark connects to, at least when this works, and if it does work correctly, again, I think I've tried all these other features, on today's show, except this one, FYI. So I don't have any personal experience with this one, but in the demos that I've looked at, it looks pretty good and pretty helpful. But, the true, feature here, I think this could shine in areas, right? I think ChatGPT voice mode is probably the ones that, most of us might use, or maybe, many of us are just still kind of disappointed with the state of voice AI, although I do think it's getting better and better. But one thing that I've always realized is sometimes, at least ChatGPT's voice mode, used to be called advanced voice mode. It's still running a super old model. It's running a version, I believe, still of the GPT 4.0 series. So not the smartest model. And in my testing, I've done a lot of testing in the past. It usually had problem accessing your files. So that's with Genspark real-time voice. I do think that's helpful in being able to access the different connectors if you did give it access to. So this isn't just transcription, right? This is voice commands that you can trigger, multi-step agent workflows across your different apps. So you can just speak tasks and get them executed, manage your calendar, check your email, right? This is one thing when I saw this demo, I'm like, oh, wait, I might actually really benefit from this. So it is also kind of available via their Speakly app. So Genspark has kind of a dictation or, real-time agent voice app called Speakly, but it does connect via Genspark as well. So you do get some use case on the freemium model, but not a whole lot. But if you are on the Plus account or the Pro account, I think you're going to get a lot more access out of this. So here's why it's useful. Well, you can just speak a complex task and Genspark's multimodal agent can break it down and execute it, right? And it claims 4 times more efficiency over keyboard input for complex tasks. And like I said, it does connect to the same agent ecosystem that handles, your research, email, content, and even phone calls. So I do think who's going to find this useful? If you're someone that's on the go, right? Give it a try on the freemium plan. But if you're someone that's on the go, it's going to be helpful. If you've tried, other kind of AI apps or AI agents that connect to your all these other tools that you use, your Slack, your calendar, your email, and it struggles for whatever reason, I think this is at least, I'm not saying this is going to, be the tool that solves your problem, but it's at least a contender that could potentially help. All right. And last, but definitely not least, this is the one that went mega viral. Yes, Anthropic released so many new features this week. All right, some that didn't even make our list, right? They have the new work tools that are available on mobile. They have the new Claude code channels, right? A very open claw feature, being able to talk to Claude code via Telegram, Discord, iMessage. They have their new co-work projects. Like I said, Anthropic literally released like 10 pretty big updates this week, but the biggest one by far, and I'll say this might be the most like viral AI update ever that wasn't a new big model, right? That's because, at least by Twitter vanity metrics, this thing got like over 75 million views. Everyone had eyeballs on this. So this isn't one you miss. All right. But this is their new computer use, right? Unfortunately, they didn't really give this a good name because at first they were kind of tying it to Dispatch, which is the new way to kind of control the desktop version of Claude Cowork with your phone, right? Dispatch, we covered this on the show last week. Really cool, right? It's a way that you can now use your phone, right? The iOS app inside Claude, and you can control your desktop computer via Dispatch, right? So before the computer use, you couldn't actually control the computer, but with computer use, you can. I'm talking about mouse clicks, keyboard inputs, not just, a web browsing agent. So this is completely different, right? What we've seen a lot with the current kind of agentic tool use stack, it's virtual browsers, right? Like a lot of these, ChatGPT agent mode, as an example, it has a virtual machine and it works in your browser. Computer use literally is computer use. Claude can see and use your computer, right? I did a lot of testing on this, and let me know. Let me know if we should do this for Wednesday's show. I'm thinking maybe. All right. But if you're listening on the podcast or on the live stream, just say computer use. All right. I always have an arbitrary random number in my head. And if we hit that, I'm like, yeah, we'll do it. So I did do some testing on it. It's super helpful. I mean, here's one of the reasons. So we did technically already have a lot of this functionality, whether it was via co-work, being able to run certain things in the terminal. But now, like, some of the testing I did, well, I was just having it launch and use other apps, right? I was kind of having fun with that. So with the new computer use, I had, Claude launch Atlas, and, that's OpenAI's agentic browser. And I was having it do some, I think I was having it use Perplexity inside of Atlas, or stuff like that, right? So I think there's some huge benefits, but first, let me just tell you a little bit more kind of about how it works. So it can now control your entire Mac. So that means open apps, navigate browsers, click buttons, fill spreadsheets, anything that requires a mouse click, right? Which is something that even their kind of Chrome extension would sometimes struggle with. Right? Because it was using screenshots and computer vision. So now this is a completely different ballgame. This is a new kind of layer. So it does use connectors first, FYI. So if you are asking something about Slack as an example, it's first going to check a Slack connector if you have it, but then it'll fall back to screen control if a connector doesn't exist or if it can't find something in that connector. So right now it works in both Claude Cowork, but also Claude Code as well. So this is confusing because it says on their kind of blog post here, it says, let Claude use your computer in Cowork. And then originally they were just tying it to Dispatch, but you don't need to use Dispatch to use it. So I'm actually kind of quite shocked. Maybe Anthropic didn't understand how quite viral this would go to give it a proper name. So I think at first people were calling it computer control via Dispatch, and then they were saying it's Cowork computer control, and I think now most people are just calling it computer use. So yeah, this is really, really helpful. So you do have to be on a paid plan right now, and it is only available for Mac, and it is a research preview. It is buggy in my limited experience so far. I've been using it for a couple of days since it was announced, but when it works, right? When it works, going back to how I started the show, I think this is the not the end interface of AI agents, but I think this is the next big interface of AI agents because I think eventually, um, especially like voice commanding agents, they're not going to need our computer per se. But I think we may, need a couple of years until agents just have kind of stronger and more reliable protocols, versus just A2A, MCPs, right? Eventually, I think agents will just be able to nicely translate everything, and they won't need to necessarily use our desktop as an operating layer. But for now, I think 100%. And the other thing, if this is used in enterprise, and that's a big if, right? Because obviously there's a lot of new dangers with this on the prompt injection side, right? But this could be something very useful, right, for companies that are using old legacy software, right, that just doesn't work well with any kind of AI. Well, now you can just keep this open, give it a pretty difficult task, and it can technically operate that legacy software. So, who else is going to find value? Why else is it useful? Right. So, like I said, this can still pair with Dispatch. So that's the cool thing. You can literally control your entire desktop computer from the Claude app on iOS, which is really cool. And I think this kind of fills the long tail, right? It covers the apps that will never have a dedicated connector. And you can, if you're running late to something, right? I was doing this a lot. If I was just out on a walk, right? And I'm like, oh, for me, it's not like I needed something, but I was just kind of testing it in that scenario. Oh, like, I know I downloaded this file on my computer. I'm not sure where it is, right? Like I said, a lot of these things were available before if you had things set up correctly via Cowork, and it could access certain elements of your computer, but now it can literally control anything on your computer as well. So, I mean, just who's going to find this valuable? If all of us, right? Literally anyone. If you're on Mac right now, if you have an iPhone, this is huge. So knowledge workers who are just juggling a lot of apps, especially those apps that don't have dedicated integrations. That's the big thing. Yeah, you can use this to showcase certain things and it's fun and it's cool. But if there's a dedicated connector or integration, you're just wasting your time by doing it this way because it is still just using computer vision and clicking around. But for all of those things that don't have dedicated apps within Claude, this is huge, right? So anyone that just wants to delegate desk work from their phone while they're on the go, or just power users who are already using Cowork or Dispatch, like I said, this, I think, signifies the next step in agentic work. So that's a wrap for today's show. I hope this was helpful. Are you liking the new Friday features? I'd say it's a quicker show, but I geeked out and accidentally talked for 36 minutes. But hopefully this is a good way. It's so hard to keep up with everything that's going on. Yeah, we do the AI news show on Monday, but like I said, a lot of that starts to seep over into just big enterprise politics, society, culture, all these other things. So I think Fridays are shows. And let me know if you find it helpful that, are like, hey, you probably missed this. Here's why it's helpful. Here's how to go find it useful and to get you going on your way. So if this was helpful, if you are on the podcast, please do me a favor. Leave us a rating if you could, right? If this is helpful, go tell other people about it, right? Subscribe to the podcast if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'd really appreciate that. Then go to youreverydayai.com. Sign up for the free daily newsletter. Thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you back next week and every day for more Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.